All right, students, I know I threw a lot at you yesterday, but let's go through the warm-up for today. The first one, we have 10 days. We're converting that to hours now. You know that 1 day is equal to 24 hours. That's going to be our converting factor. Remember that vocabulary from yesterday. We're going to take what they give us, those 10 days, and put that on top in a ratio. We're just going to toss that over 1. We're multiplying it by our converting factor. We want to get rid of days. Days is on the top here, so in our converting factor, it's going to be on the bottom with our 24 hours then on top. When we multiply straight across, we end up with 240 over 1. When we do that and divide, we end up with the days canceling out because they are diagonal. Days divided by days is just 1, so we don't need to write that down. And we're left with hours, so our answer then is just 240 hours. For the next one, we are converting 4 hours to minutes. We know that 1 hour is equal to 60 minutes, so that we will use for our converting factor. We start with what they give us, the 4 hours, and toss that over 1 because we want a fraction multiplied by a fraction, and our converting factor is, again, a fraction. We want to get rid of hours. Hours is on the top in my ratio, so it's going to be on the bottom in our converting factor. We want them diagonal to each other. So 1 hour on the bottom, 60 minutes on top. Then we can multiply straight across, and we get 240 divided by 1. When I do that, the H and the H will cancel out, and I'm left with just minutes. So my answer is 240 minutes. Make sure you are checking your work as I'm going through these. The next one, we have feet to inches. Our converting factor, we have 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. We'll be using that for our next one as well. We'll take what they give us, 12 feet, put it as a ratio, so we'll just put it over 1, multiplying it by our converting factor. We want to get rid of feet, so feet will now be on the bottom. So 1 foot, 12 inches. When we multiply straight across, we get 144 over 1. When I do that, we got rid of the feet. They cancel out. Feet divided by feet ends up with none. No unit there, so then we're just left with inches. So our answer then is 144 inches. Our final warm-up problem. Again, our inches, 2 feet, write what they give us here. Using our units, we want to be writing our units. I know you're used to writing fractions without the units. Now we want to include our units in our ratios because we need to know what we're talking about. We'll toss it over 1. Now when we multiply, we want inches to go away, so inches will be on the bottom with our 1 foot on top. We multiply and we get 24 over 12. When we did that, our inches cancel out and we're left with just the unit of feet. 24 divided by 12 is 2, so it's 2 feet. I know you can do these a lot without writing down all of this work, but we need to practice writing these converting factors for when we get to these more complex problems. Today we're continuing to work on finding a unit rate. So in your notes, you need to write down lesson 2.6, day 2, unit rates. I'll give you a moment to do that. We're finding and comparing unit rates. So for this first problem, we're just going to find the unit rate. When we do that, we just want to start with writing that ratio. To do so, let's find our important information. We have a pool filled with 30 gallons in 12 minutes. So we're going to write that as 30 G for gallons in 12 minutes. I want to get it down to the unit, so I need a single minute. That unit is going to be in our denominator where we have it down to our single unit. So when I do this, I want to ask myself, what can I divide both of those numbers by? I know that I can divide them both by 6. When I divide them both by 6, I end up with 5 gallons in 2 minutes. Now I'm looking at that. This is a little bit easier problem to solve. 5 divided by 2 gives me 2.5. So now I have 2.5 gallons per minute. Make sure you're following along and writing that down in your notes as we go. Let's try now a comparison problem. This one's going to be a little bit more tricky because we're dealing with decimals. I suggest you write this down so you can refer to it while you work on your homework. For this one, we're talking about a bike ride. So you take 15 minutes to bike 3.1 miles. It takes Zach 24 minutes to bike 5.1 miles. It's not the same distance, it's not the same time, so we can't quite compare it yet. We need to get them down to their unit rates so that we can compare them more easily. What we start with, we'll just start with the rate you bike at. 15 minutes to bike 3.1 miles. When I look at that, I'm going to divide. When I divide 15 by 3.1, remember I need to move that decimal in my divisor, so I need to move my decimal in my dividend. I'm going to give you a moment to do that. All right, to check your work. We work so far, and then you can stop at that decimal, and you will get an answer of 4.83. So when we divide that, it ends up being 4.83 minutes per mile. I know that's not the normal way that you're usually used to hearing it. It's usually miles per minute, but we're going to write the ratio down just as it gives it to us. As long as we do them both the same way, it would not matter. So for this next one for Zach, it's 24 minutes to 5.1 miles. We're going to do the same process, and we are going to divide 24 divided by 5.1. Again, move that decimal and add the 0 so that you can do the division. I'll give you a moment to do that as well. When we solve that problem, we end up with 4.7. We don't need to continue going on because at this point we can already compare. If that equals 4.7, it's going to be minutes per mile. We can compare who takes less time to ride their bike or to finish that mile, and we know that it is Zach. He takes less minutes, so Zach is our faster biker. We found each of them down to their unit rate, and then we could compare them. All right, make sure you're continuing to write down these notes. Page 801 is very helpful for you for your conversion factors. You should have your books here with you today. For 8 gallons, we're converting that to quarts. You have to ask yourself, how many quarts are in a gallon? There are 4 quarts in 1 gallon. So with that information, we can convert it from gallons to quarts. We're going to write 8 gallons, just like we did in our warm-up, and toss it over 1. We're multiplying by our converting factor. 4 quarts is going to go on the top because we want the gallons to cancel out. So we're going to put 4 quarts on the top, 1 gallon on the bottom, because when they're diagonal, they can cancel. So then we can multiply straight across, and we get 32 over 1, which is just equal to 32 quarts, which is our answer. I want you to try the next one completely on your own. You should know that converting factor. I'll give you a moment to do that. All right, let's check our work now. We have 45 feet. We're going to write that over 1. Use our converting factor. Our converting factor is going to be 1 yard is equal to 3 feet. We want feet to cancel out, so it's going to go on the bottom.